Yo, Ryan Hart here. Welcome to the Always Better Than Yesterday podcast channel. These are the interview sessions where I put my curious questions to inspiring people with one goal in mind, to help you be better than you were yesterday in your heart and in your mind. While you're here spending time with us, I'd love it if you subscribed, leave a like, or maybe drop a comment below with letting us know some of your thoughts on the interview. Please do share it with someone that you'd love to help be better too. Ryan, welcome to the Always Better Than Yesterday podcast. It's so good to have you, my friend. How are you?
I'm good, man. Thanks for having me. I appreciate the opportunity to properly connect again. I know you were on one of my live shows and got to talk to Len Shoney, so it's good to have a one-on-one now.
That was really cool. I think that was in the early stages of like quarantine lockdown here in the UK. So that's a really cool thing that you put on. But I guess the synchronicity is that I came across your podcast. I think it was one of the early times that you had Patrick on the first time. And I've been a fan of your work since. And I guess I just want to say thank you, because I was in the police at that time. I was in my early stages of welcome to management. I had just, been promoted, and, policing was very much rank and hierarchy and position. And I became a parent at the same time, and I was getting this sense that parenting and leadership, they were one of the same, but everything about my work environment was showing me that rank was leadership or position or time in. I just want to thank you for what you've put out and the great minds that you've shared on your podcast. And I guess, 405 episodes in and you're still showing up every week. Just hats off to you, my friend. Huge respect.
I appreciate that. It means a lot, especially coming from a guy like you. When I started doing it, it was really to follow my own curiosity, and it still is. But the added bonus, in addition to the relationships I've been able to forge with some of my guests, is having talks like this with you, and being able to impact high quality, high character, high caliber people who are trying to make a difference, trying to make an impact, trying to help other people. If anything that I do helps that even a little bit, man, that's a huge win. So I appreciate you saying that. It means a lot to me.
That's amazing. So for the sake of it, I'll add it in the show notes, but it's the Learning Leader Show with Ryan Hawk. And, I think when you have these conversations, you can't not be better for them. You can't not. How are some of the ways in which you've been better in your own leadership through speaking with some of these people?
Yeah, you mentioned it's been over 400 of them over the past 6 years. I would say I was like a lot of people when you're newer to leadership is maybe you see something in a movie or on TV. If you're not well read yet, like I wasn't, you think of the leadership as command and control. I have the title, I say it, you do it. I say it, you follow. More of the compliant style of leadership. And that's why one of the big lines that I've thought about a lot and I wrote in my first book is compliance can be commanded, but commitment cannot. And I think the biggest shift that I've thought about through having so many conversations is the most effective leaders in the world understand how to build committed followers instead of compliant ones. Whereas you're compliant because someone may have a title. I work for a boss, and maybe earlier in my career, I didn't necessarily align with them, but I had to comply because I didn't want to get fired. And there are a lot of, unfortunately, people and bosses in positions that think they're leaders because of their title and because their people comply. And my challenge to them is to hold up a mirror to themselves, to really analyze and think, is my team compliant or are they committed? And am I working on myself to be the type of leader that makes people want to voluntarily commit to our mission, to me, to what we're doing? And in order to do that, you have to do a ton of continuous work on yourself to, as you've talked about, to always work on getting better each day. And being very intentional and deliberate about working on yourself to be the type of person that others choose to commit to. And I'm trying to do the same thing because I'm lucky now to meet with these incredible people and to be able to ask them whatever I want for an hour at a time, long form, in-depth conversations. And And now that there's so many people listening, I'm trying to do a couple of things. One is follow my own curiosity, but two, to help others who have shown an interest in it and think about what would they want to know, and then pose the questions to hopefully get some of those answers out. And it's my favorite thing to do, man. I tell you, it's my ultimate favorite thing to do outside of time with my family, is have long form conversations with a thoughtful person who's accomplished and more intelligent than me. And I get to do it a lot. So I feel very grateful for that. And that's the fuel. That's kind of the why behind why I show up and try to be really prepared and do it every day.
It's interesting you said the word prepared. I was going to touch on the fact you said lucky. And I know that you put a lot of time and effort in preparation. I see the pictures of behind the scenes when you're writing notes all the time. What's your take on luck?
So personally, I am much more luckier than most. I was born into two incredible parents. I have two great brothers. I'm in the middle of them. Upper middle class because of how hard my mom and dad continue to work. So I part of the motivation for me to work so hard is because of how lucky I am. Because of the luck I was born into, because of what I've been given, that I don't deserve any of it. And so I think like Steve Prefontaine said, to not give everything you have is to waste the gift. And that's how I view what I've been lucky enough to be given, with incredible parents and family and support and love. And not everybody gets that. And as you get older and you kind of gain some perspective in life, you realize, in fact, that, whoa, I kind of started ahead of most people based on just my family situation and them being so loving and supportive and there for us. That's not always the case. And to me, though, it was normal. So I didn't feel like I was lucky when I was younger. I'm like, this is just the way it is, until you gain some perspective. So when it comes to luck, I personally, like, thinking of myself first, I'm personally extremely lucky. And my mission is to get every ounce out of what I've been given and give that to hopefully other people, utilize the luck to then make a difference, to make an impact, to help other people. I see my parents doing that. I see my brothers doing that. I want to do the same thing. And so I think for those of us who are lucky, I feel a responsibility to make the most of it.
You've been hosting the podcast now for about 7 years. Like, why did you choose podcasts as the platform?
At the time, so this is before there were a lot of them, but I was a listener. So I listened to the ones like Joe Rogan, some of the earlier ones that were out there, Bill Simmons for sports. So those guys have been doing it for over a decade. And I also had developed, I think, some skill when it came to interviewing because of my job. I was in a mid-level management role, and we were in a growing company. And I think I'd built kind of a reputation for myself as being a pretty good interviewer. So not only would I be interviewing candidates for my team, I would get put on projects to help interview candidates for other teams in other parts of the business. So I was doing it. I had done tons of interviews. It's different, interviewing for a job than it is interviewing on a podcast, but you do still need to follow your curiosity and think of useful questions and try to get to know people. So there are some similarities. So it's a combination of, I was a listener. I developed some skill through getting a lot of repetition. I also had just finished my MBA, and my company reimbursed furthering our education. And so I felt like I was wasting money by not going back to school. So I actually started applying to get another graduate degree in some form of management or leadership. But at the same time, all of that was happening, I had a dinner set up with Todd Wagner. And Todd Wagner is Mark Cuban's business partner. Todd's a less famous one of broadcast.com, both billionaires. And I or became billionaires through selling that business to Yahoo. I had this opportunity to meet with him one-on-one prior to the dinner. And I just peppered him with questions and just asked him so many things, following what I was most curious about. Maybe annoyed him, I don't know, but he didn't show. He was so grateful and kind and giving. And as I was flying home from that, the combination of that confluence of events of need to go back to school because I have to further my education, just finished my MBA. I've developed some skill as an interviewer. I just had this amazing conversation with this incredible leader who had sustained excellence. What if I create my own form of a leadership PhD program where I get to choose all of my professors?
Mm,
I will have long form conversations with them. I will try to create a platform which will then hopefully enable me to talk to more people who are impressive and have led lives of excellence so that I could get from all of them, and then maybe if I do a good job, I could share that publicly. I could share my leadership PhD program in public for
mm,
free that
mm,
everyone else could listen to. And who knows? Who knows what could happen? Now, I didn't envision this where I would leave my corporate America job and do this full time. But at the time, I was committed to trying to be excellent at it, to trying to do as good of a job as possible in order to follow my own curiosity and hopefully help other people along the way. And fortunately, a lot of that is happening as we speak.
yeah. Yeah, your chosen professors are some of the best thought leaders in the entire world, and um, I often get asked, "How did I get, you know, Brian Hawke on my show? How did I get Dr. Gary Chapman, John Gordon, Captain David Marquet?" And my answer is always the same: I had to do episode one. You know,
Yeah.
I had to do episode one. How much do you remember of episode one for you?
So I had Jason Gaynard on. He's the creator of Mastermind Talks. I remember it really well. I remember being extremely nervous. I had scripted basically every question. Um, I'm not sure how well I listened. If you listen to that episode, it's rough. I haven't listened to it in a while, but people bring it up from time to time. It but like a lot of things in life, I think, and I love your answer there, Ryan. So it's really useful for people. There's not many things you're going to go and do where the first time or even the first 50 times you're that good at it.
Mm,
I haven't found one of those yet. Like I'm born with some athletic ability, so I can go like learn pickleball and be decent at it pretty quickly because of my hand-eye coordinations. Again, part of the luck.
mhm,
um but I'm not going to beat anybody who's even pretty good at the game. And so the same thing with running a podcast. It just takes a lot of repetition and analysis of listening to yourself, thinking like, how could I have done that better, taking detailed notes, and then really working on the craft, studying other great interviewers, figuring out better ways to approach somebody, um, uh, actually deeply listening, because the best questions are always the follow-ups. The
mm,
first ones are good and they get it started, but it's really when you get the good volleying going back and forth where they say something that really piques your curiosity and it creates a question. Ryan, you probably get this too, but one of the I think one of my favorite emails to receive is when someone says, "You always seem to ask the question that I want you to ask in the moment I want you to ask it."
mm,
And you don't have a and you don't and you're not afraid to do that as well. I would say, Ryan, the first 100 to maybe even 200 episodes, I was afraid a
mm,
lot. Like I didn't want to challenge anybody. I was just kind of agreeing with them all the time, even if I didn't fully agree.
mm,
Because I was just afraid to not insult my guests, or at least I thought that. Whereas I noticed that telling a guest what you actually believe and what you think, if it's a thought out, thoughtful
mhm,
point of view and perspective, I think a lot of guests like that. They want to have banter, they want to talk, they want to have discourse. And so
mhm,
there's so much to talk about from episode 1 to 400, but the main theme of that is you're probably not going to be very good, but you got to get going, and you got to
mm,
get the repetitions and to really think about how I can improve at this. But I think part of it is you have to love that process of not
mm.
being good initially and then seeing kind of incremental growth as you go.
Yeah, I love that. Some of my, and before I get onto the book, I'm definitely coming to that shortly, but some of my favorite episodes to reflect back on are when I've had my family on, or some of my close friends, and I've had my son on. I know that you've had your dad, your brother, your wife. How do you reflect back on those episodes?
I mean, they're some of my favorites. It's weird. sometimes you put a microphone in front of somebody that you love and that you're very close to, and all of a sudden you'll ask questions that you wouldn't ask if there wasn't a microphone there. And if you know you're going to publish it, maybe you feel like you can come at it from a different point of view. I encourage it. I never know if people are going to like them. I mean, I like them, and that's part of the equation that goes into it. But I think I've recorded on the hundreds with my dad or my dad and my brother every time, and then with my wife we recorded on our anniversary this year. They seem to be episodes that people like. I like it. I'll probably continue doing it, but I don't know. I haven't had a child on yet. What's that like for you since you had a child on?
Well, it's brave because that they say it as it is, and like with
How old?
leadership, and so he was 6 when he came on first
Oh, that's
time.
awesome. Okay, so
Yeah,
how was it?
it was great. Honestly, it was one of the most inspiring. I think we can get all these thought leaders in the world, and sometimes there's a bit of depersonalization. That's great for them because they're Tony Robbins. They're doing these things.
Mm-hmm.
When it's a 6-year-old dropping bombs about practice makes progress, all of a sudden it's just like so much more relatable, so much more endearing.
Yeah.
And the amount of comments, like, it's tenfold compared to some of my other guests. On the flip side of that, like, being from a leadership perspective, you got to be brave because he sees all, and we try and have a clear sense of what it means to be a Hartley. And in this house, we're Hartleys and we help people. But there are occasions when he's absolutely had to keep me accountable to not being better than yesterday or not helping. And he'll say that on air.
I love it.
So
I
it's
love
good
it,
for
man.
them.
No, that's awesome. Yeah, I love that.
What does it mean to be a hawk?
What's really cool is that my dad's dad, my grandpa, Dean Hawk, who is he's the most selfless person I've ever met. He I think modeled what it means to be there for other people, his own family first and foremost. Had a daughter, my aunt, with special needs for 40 years, and he gave everything to her. His life kind of revolved around taking care of her. My grandma got sick towards the end for years, and he was the same way with her. And my dad is the same way as him. And so and my mom is too now, through that, I think, through their loving relationship. So to me, the first thing I think of is being humble and being caring for others. And he didn't even tell us. Like, my grandpa has never sat us down and told us that. He showed us. Instead of telling, he showed us, and he continues to show us to this day. And my dad's the same way. And so I think about with our kids the same way. Like, yes, we're going to talk about what we're trying to do to help other people, but more importantly, we actually have to do it. Sure. We have to model the type of relationship, the love between my wife and I, that we show deliberately in front of them, even if it's awkward or weird, they make fun of us. We love that. We show how we try to take care of our neighbors, literally like neighbors in our neighborhood, how we take care of them, especially if they need something. We do our best to help teammates on sports teams. I think what it's really all about, and that I learned from my grandpa first and foremost, is just how to take care of other people, to think of them first, to be kind and giving. That's the first thing if you say, what does it mean to be a hawk? That's the first thing that I think of, and it's because of them. And now I'm just trying my best to live up to that. And certainly we're not there yet, but we're certainly trying really hard to be.
That's really powerful. Thank you for sharing that. And I'd love just to touch on the book now, because I think what you just touched on there is that leadership is very much a verb. It's the doing. And you're host of the Learning Leader Show, and you threw me by the title of the book. I didn't see this one coming. And in the early chapters, you talk about coming into a team leader position at 27. So you and I have that in common. We both became team leaders at 27. And there's a story that you share, and it follows it up both. Welcome to management. Can you share that story?
So I get promoted because I worked in sales, a telephonic sales professional role, low base salary, really high upside though if you do well. Which was a great job, first job, because I didn't know what I wanted to do when I got done playing football. did well for a few years, and because of that, it provided me the opportunity to interview to manage a team of my own. However, the skills that I developed to be good at the job of being an individual contributor,
Mm.
almost none of those had anything to do with the now job that I had earned as being a manager of a team. And within the first week, so I'm young, relatively young on the role. Most people on the team are older than me. And there was someone in their mid 40s, and she walks up to I'm in my new office thinking I'm like the king here. You know, I got an expensive chair, I got windows, and
Yep.
I'm like putting my feet up even when I'm in a private moment, thinking like, wow, I've kind of made it,
Yep.
which obviously is just so stupid. But anyway, I'm doing that, and she comes up to my door, and I look out the door, and she kind of pauses, and her lips are kind of pursed, and then she starts crying and walks in and shuts the door and says, Ryan, my husband cheated on me and he wants a divorce.
Mm.
And obviously I'm thinking, why are you telling me this? Like we were peers a week earlier. I mean, I was on because I managed the same team that I was on.
Mm.
So I got elevated to everyone I was a peer. I was now their boss. And I didn't really have conversations with my boss like that. I kind of tried to show up,
Mm.
crush the number, and I didn't really share a lot with him. So, but what I realized in that moment was just because I was one way doesn't mean that that's the way everyone should be or has to be or is. In fact,
Mm.
each of the people on my team had different styles and personalities and ways that I needed to learn about them and care
Mm.
about them to understand that. And I realized in this moment, I don't know what I'm doing. I had, what am I going to say? I have no idea. I've never experienced that. You know, she had kids, and this is real life stuff. And I realized she just needed somebody to listen. She needed someone to kind of vent to a little bit. I tried to be there for her. I don't think I offered her any type of advice. If I did, I'm sure it was terrible,
Mm.
but it was really just realizing I don't know what I got myself into. And I did call my dad. I'm like, have you ever had this? He's like, unfortunately, yes. If you manage long enough, you will have situations like this. And he's like, what did you say? I'm like, I don't even remember I don't think I really said much. He's like, yeah, at times, you know, you got to be a good listener and show that you truly care and you're there for her and make sure you follow up and do he was kind of coaching me along. But the moment was, and he's like, welcome to management. You know, the moment is that there are so many aspects of doing jobs. If you haven't had the role yet, it's easy to criticize the leader. It's easy to criticize the manager. It's easy to criticize the CEO when you're in the cheap seats, right? You think of the Roosevelt "Man in the Arena" quote, and that's why I urge people to hold off judgment on the people maybe way above you in the organization until you have some sort of idea of what it is they're going through. It's just like in life, seek first to understand before being understood. It's a good maxim to live by, because you don't really know what your manager or what the CEO is going through. And I didn't realize that was part of the job. I thought, she's crazy. Like, what is she doing? And then I realized this is not crazy. In fact, it was more normal that people came into my office and shared stuff like that than like how I treated my boss, where I didn't really tell him much. I just kind of said, hey, what's the goal? I'm going to go crush it. Most people aren't like that. In fact, most people want to share with their boss for a variety of reasons. And I just was not prepared. I mean, my previous leadership experience was as a quarterback playing football. We
Mm.
didn't really, none of that. I had no experience with a mid 40s woman whose husband cheated on her, who wanted a divorce. I mean, I've never experienced anything like that, but that's real life. And that happens. If you're in a management role and you have people reporting to you and you do it long enough, you're gonna unfortunately go through a situation like that. And so the purpose of the book was to try to help people who were in my spot, the
Mm.
27-year-old first time manager who got promoted, to try to help them be better prepared for that moment than I was when I'm stumbling over myself and just trying to not screw it up.
I love that, and I love the book that it's so practical as well. I love the way that it's written, and I think you've nailed it. You know, for leadership is about service and sacrifice, and if we're going to do that, we have to be able to manage the fight, flight, freeze kind of
Mhm.
scenario of, oh, you know, how do I deal with this? I've never dealt with this before, and I think that's where the spotlight in leading yourself kind of comes from. And you've interviewed James Clear a number of times, and he talks about, the stacking of habits. What would you say was like the number one habit that served you best in terms of leading yourself?
Myself, for me, I'm pretty routine and ritual oriented. This probably stems from earlier in my life, with my sports background. That was my top priority. And so for me now, it's something as simple as laying out the clothes the night before, and I'm going to wake up really early to physically push myself, because that helps me mentally prepare for a day where I want the hardest thing that I'm going to do to be the first thing that I'm going to do. And so I push myself beyond what I think I'm capable of, and usually in some physical realm, lifting weights, running, working out. And that's kind of the keystone habit for the day, to the foundation to get it started right. And this is a 7-day-a-week thing for me. I think it's kind of, I might have like a mental issue in the fact that I have to do this, but I have met other people like this where they have to get up and start their days this way. That's for me one of the big habits, and everything kind of stacks off of that, because I've pushed myself physically, I've pushed myself mentally, and now I'm going to go try to write a book, or I'm going to try to prepare for a podcast, or deliver a keynote speech, or be a guest on a good podcast where I want to provide value. Like, all of that follows that initial foundational exercise, if you will. And then secondarily, it's really important to take care of yourself. It's really important, both physically and mentally, to do that. And if you let yourself go, which is easy to do as you age, because it's harder to wake up, it's harder to do the exercise. If you let yourself go, I think a lot of bad things can happen, both physically and mentally. And so for me, it's like, just don't let it ever get to that point. Like, do everything at least within my power, and with the luck that's been bestowed upon me, to take advantage of a healthy body, and make the most of that as well. And that then leads to basically everything else that I do. So for me, it starts the night before, very early morning, push myself really hard physically, which then also impacts me mentally. And then the rest, it's like, okay, here we go. And that's just a part of what I've started doing many years ago, and continue to do to this day, and did this morning, in fact. Yeah.
I love that. I've got hundreds and hundreds of questions that I could ask you, but I want to be super respectful of your time. We are in lockdown here in the UK, lockdown 3.0, as it's so affectionately referred to.
I'm curious, what is the lockdown? Because people use now quarantine as like just a general, they're not really quarantining. They're just, they just say that word, but they still go places and do things. So like, what is the lockdown situation there compared to here?
Government mandate is you must stay at home. If you can work from, if you can work from home, you must stay at home, and you can
So you guys like are not leaving your house.
We can go out once a day for exercise, and we can go out for essentials. So you can do your shopping and the like. So yeah, no house mixing, no socials, bars and restaurants are closed. It's and if you can work from home remotely, you must. And
how are people responding to that? Because in the States, I feel like there has been initially, I feel like we did it. And now, like, look at Tom Brady celebrating the Super Bowl and everyone in Florida. I mean, and it's not just Florida. There are other places in the States too. I mean, now people go out to eat, they're partying, they're doing, like, it's not like that. So how, and I think people are just tired of it. You know what I mean? How is it there?
Yeah, nail on the head. I think lockdown 1 was novel. It was new. We were embracing the novelty of it. The weather was good. People were getting in touch with baking and all these cool things, and reading and art. You get to lockdown 3 and it's winter, it's dark, people are weary, they're sick of it now. They thought it would be, we talk about aim past the target. We need that right now in England, because people got to Christmas and we thought we'll be done by, and yet we're still here in January and February. Everyone's looking at the back of 2020 going, oh, thank the Lord that's gone, and nothing's changed because it's 2021, but mentally people weren't ready for it. And that's where we are. 2021.
So it's tough. I mean, I think this is really impacting people's mental health, as well as obviously the physical aspects of a pandemic. It's brutal. So, how are you doing personally, and how's your family through it all?
It's a really good question. It's tough. I have a lockdown look, so my listeners won't be able to see the long hair growing. But we've got two kids, 8 and 5. We're not teachers, and it is very different when they're your own kids as well. Like
Yeah.
it's just big emotions. But
Yeah.
I think my wife and I we had some troubles and challenges in 2019, which I'm glad they happened then, because throughout lockdown we'd have killed each other otherwise.
Hmm.
We formed a really strong team, healthy
Hmm.
conflict, and real trust, and that wasn't always present, and grateful for those challenges, because I don't know how people are if they haven't got that foundation of good communication at home, that it's a real challenge.
Well, yeah, I find throughout a time of kind of where you're forced to be together, you're going to learn a lot. And is it going to be? And I think people are coming together or unfortunately pulling apart. And I that's been one of the neat things about this, and I'm trying to be positive, is just the forced family time when we had wild schedules with sports mainly, because you're having to divide and conquer and even get help from other parents to get kids to where they need to go. And so when that hasn't happened as much, although that's happening a little bit more now where we are playing some sports for kids. But that like forced time, I feel like we've gotten a lot closer through that. Even though there have been moments where it's evident this is kind of getting on everyone's last nerve, but for the most part, it's been really positive,
Yeah.
at least with the closeness of it, despite a few of those days where it's understandable a kid or somebody loses their mind temporarily, or me, which I've certainly done that.
Yeah,
you know
absolutely. And I just, so when I came on your show, Patrick shared some top tips for leaders leading remotely, and one thing he said was be exceedingly human. It
Mhm.
was something I really took to heart. And what would be some of your top tips, top number one tip, practical tip for leaders who are having to navigate and lead remotely?
Yeah, I mean, this is probably going to go on for a long time, even afterwards, because I think kind of the work from anywhere mentality is going to become more normal,
Mm,
where people prove they can produce from anywhere. It will continue to happen, and from like a business perspective, they could save cost of not having as much office space and of random places all over the world. I think being overly communicative is important as a leader, making sure your team knows where you are, where you stand, what you believe, what you think. This is why I focus so much on my show and off of it of encouraging leaders to really work on their communication skill, most notably their written communication.
mm,
I think the most impactful leaders understand how to get up and give a good 5 minute, 10 minute, 20-minute talk. They know how to compose a really impactful 2 or 3 paragraph email, or Slack or whatever they use. They're continuously working on mastering their communication skill. And so for any leader listening or anyone who wants to lead a team, my dad told me this really earlier in my career. He's like, if you develop the ability to effectively communicate a vision, a message, an email, a
mm,
speech, you'll see rewards beyond what you even deserve. The people who can get up and give that talk or write that note and impact people through their communication skill, that will write your ticket for you. So I would encourage leaders, really think about that note you're sending, really think
mm,
about how you approach the Zoom meeting. I mean, buy a microphone, get a light, get a decent camera, like show your team that you respect them enough to sound and look good, and that your message is concise and clear, and they
mm,
have a complete understanding of your care for them as well as their role in accomplishing the mission.
mm,
And to me, it always baffles my mind if I see someone who hasn't figured this out yet. It's not really that hard. And if this is the only way that we can communicate for the time being, or it might be the primary way we do, especially if people are going to move and do things like that,
mm,
which is happening now in the States a lot,
mm.
you better get good at it. there's no like excuse not to get good at this. It's not that hard. So really think about the small details and how you communicate with your team, and work to be excellent at it. If you're going to do it, you might as well do it, right? I say that about everything. Like if you're going to write a book, if you're going to do a podcast, if you're going to talk to your team, then be excellent at it. Do everything within your power to be excellent at that, and really think that through before just wandering on to the next Zoom meeting or clicking forward on some random corporate email. Like, no, like really think that through before doing that.
I love that. I love the intentionality. I love the call to action, and like all great leaders create leaders, and you, my friend, are creating world-class leaders. And I thank you for the way that you show up and the way that you encourage leaders to be better, because that's how we create a world that is better than yesterday. And I'd just be curious to know what that phrase, always better than yesterday, means to you.
Well, you've followed some of my work, so you know that I am a big fan of the phrase that I learned from JJ Redick, which is never arrived, always becoming. And I think that's synonymous with your show and with what it's all about, is having a mindset of, regardless of what happens, I have never and will never arrive. I always have a mindset of becoming. I'm always striving to improve, to get better. Now, this doesn't mean we're not going to celebrate. It doesn't mean that we're not going to be happy or even content. No, we can do those things, and we should do those things. I mean, it's life. Let's try to enjoy it. But it also means like we're still striving to compound our efforts to get better, regardless of any levels of excellence we achieve along the way. And because of this love of trying to become, the results will follow. Like Bill Walsh said, the score takes care of itself. I'm a big believer in that. If you look at kind of the micro actions you take every day, the score seems to take care of itself. The outcomes seem to take care of itself if we're intentional and consistent and show up with a mindset of trying to become every day. That then all just happens. And I love that aspect of it. When someone says like, how did you get so-and-so, or how did you do that, or how did you accomplish that? Well, it's usually not like a clear-cut answer, because it's a series of behaviors and thought process and intentionality behind how you behaved for the last 5 years or 10 years. And that led to moment A, moment B, moment C. That happens to, like, from the outside, like, wow. I mean, Steve Martin's one of the best examples ever. I mean, I don't know how well known he is worldwide, but this guy's a stand-up comedian and a movie star and banjo player. He did gigs for 10 years, sometimes for crowds as small as one person in an open mic night in a bar. 10 years. And then he's selling out arenas with 25,000 people. And people say, wow, this guy came from nowhere. Not true. He consistently showed up day after day after day and put in the work. And then the result took care of itself. So that's what it means to me. I know that was long-winded, but I love the question. Love what your show stands for, man.
Thank you, my friend. And, just urge my listeners to go and check out. There's a reason why Forbes called it the best leadership book of 2020. Welcome to Management. It's an incredible book. I'll add it in the show notes. And I just want to thank you for everything that you put out in the world to help leaders be better. I think, when leaders get better, teams get better, companies get better, communities and families get better as well. So thank you for everything that you're doing. I'd just be honored if you could leave us a final thought from your good self.
I appreciate what you're doing. I guess my thought would be, what have you found to be some of the commonalities among the people you've talked to on your show that have led them to be better tomorrow than they are today?
That's a really good question. Do you know what? Sometimes it's the way that they see adversity. There's so many people get to where they are not because they haven't faced adversity, but because the way they choose to see it. And I think those that choose to see it as an enabler and as an empowerer, they go on with, purpose, passion, conviction, belief, and a story with which to communicate that will unite and connect other people to similar pain. So I think it's the way that they choose to see adversity.
Love it, man. They view it as an opportunity for growth, right? To push your edges of your zone of comfort and competency. I love it, man. So good.
Appreciate the question, my friend, and I hope you have a great rest of your week.
Thanks, man. I appreciate it, Ryan. Thanks for having me.